Struggling with a sense of identity and self-worth is commonplace for a witcher. So believe me when I say, I'm more than a little familiar with what you may be going through. More than that, I'm familiar with the strategies many use to cope with feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. Generally speaking, there is really one of two ways most folk try to deal with their inner discontent: escape or affirmation. The first is the more common of the two. The discomfort associated with the feeling of not measuring up or not being enough often becomes so overwhelming that people feel themselves left with no other option than to simply run. Whether it be through hedonistic pleasure or some other mode of distraction, folk invest countless hours of their lives drowning out the voice of their own internal critic. They can't face themselves, so they do what they can to get lost in a fog of carnal excess. Others adopt a different approach. Instead of running from their sense of inadequacy, they get into a shouting match with it. When negative self-talk reaches a fevered pitch, these folk respond by matching tone through self-affirmation. I'm good enough. I'm worthy. I'm perfect the way I am. These are the verbal weapons brought to bear against the enemy within. And when their own self-affirmation fails to do the trick, folk quickly turn to recruit more foot soldiers to the cause. Whether through verbal persuasion or outright compulsion, those at war with themselves often enlist the collective approval of others to affirm what they are and to quench the fires of their own crippling self-doubt. Maybe you've tried one of these strategies, maybe both. If so, I want to ask you, how's it going? Honestly, has it worked? Have you effectively silenced your inner critic? Are you at peace with yourself and the world around you? If not, perhaps it's time to adopt a different strategy. Perhaps it's time to do what few are ever truly willing to do: to listen. Contrary to what you've been told, self-criticism isn't intrinsically evil. It has genuine utility for those with the wisdom to interpret it properly. The hard truth is that you really aren't all you could be. Not by my estimation, and not by anyone else's, but by your own. You routinely do the things you know you shouldn't, and consistently fail to do the things you should. Your own personal values testify against you daily, and your inner critic knows it. It isn't stupid. It can see through the thin veneer of sufficiency you present to the world, and it's calling you out. Does it exaggerate and embellish? Yes, it often does, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have something important to say. It doesn't mean it hasn't identified something true about you. If you've the courage to interpret what it's really saying, your inner critic can be an invaluable asset. It can highlight deficiencies and identify weaknesses. It can point you directly to the gross imbalances in your life and pinpoint the destructive patterns which are compromising your true well-being. If you can begin to view your inner critic not as an enemy, but a tool, a new world of possibilities becomes open to you. Through careful and serious self-diagnosis, you'll quickly be presented with a laundry list of habits and behaviors that are making you sick, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. This list is a roadmap. It's charting a path for you out of your present rut. It's showing you measurable, concrete steps you can take right now to begin aligning with the values you've been running from or drowning out. Many people squander a great deal of both time and coin looking for advice on how to get their shit together. They don't realize that a simple consultation with their own inner critic will provide them with more practical advice than they'd know what to do with if they'd simply ask themselves the right questions. Don't believe me? Run the experiment yourself. Ask yourself honestly, what things am I routinely not doing, which if I did them would directly contribute to my well-being? Then ask, what things am I routinely doing which if I stopped doing them would likewise contribute to my well-being? These questions are absurdly simple, but the results they'll produce are anything but absurd. In no time at all, you'll know exactly what you are and are not doing to undermine your own happiness. Do you understand how profound that is? You silently posed two questions inside your own head, and something answered back. Not only that, it gave you the right answers. That voice was your inner critic. But this time, instead of flogging you, it gave you a very practical set of solutions. Why? Because instead of ignoring it, as you often do, you consulted it. Instead of drowning it out with entertainment and drink, you communed with it. Instead of neglecting it, you put it to work and gave it a job. You asked the right questions and in turn it told you what you needed to hear. Don't you see? The voice of your own internal self-criticism isn't out to get you. It's trying to protect you from your apathy, your disregard, and your self-destructive behavior. But it can only do that if you do your part, if you approach it with honesty and sincerity. Blow it off or fail to utilize it and it quickly becomes unruly. In its desperation to protect you, it will begin to assault you with negative and self-denigrating talk. It will constantly harass you, not because it hates you, but because in many ways, your survival depends upon it getting your attention. Self-destructive behavior has its name for a reason. If repeated with enough consistency, it destroys. Health, wealth, and relational ties are routinely burned to ash in the wildfires of a self-destructive lifestyle. Your critic knows it, and it's working overtime to tamp down the flames before nothing is left but the burnt husk of your own wasted potential. So before you go drowning it in yet another glass of ale, or shouting over it with feverish affirmations of a self-love you don't really feel, why not listen for a bit? Ask good questions and see what answers you get. You may come to find that what you've been looking for in sex, drink, or the approval of others has been there the whole time, right there in the one place you've never had the courage to look: within.